time for us to get started this morning with our classes. And Joe Pruitt's going to lead our prayer for us as we start off. As Joe alluded to in his prayer, things happened quickly in the area, and as the storms came through, it was really bad. Couldn't help but think as we was getting ready for the lesson today that it was a pretty traumatic experience that the people went through at Christ's time too during this week of the crucifixion and the actual activities of it. But it's one thing important that we can learn out of all this. Life can happen quickly, death can happen quickly, but what's here forever? That's eternity. And what we're going to be studying about today is that thing that has allowed us to look towards eternity and not be in a panic of what happens when death comes if we follow with what Christ said. Last week we studied about the garden and Christ being taken into custody and the fact that he went through 6 different trials real quickly on Thursday night, Friday morning early. He went for 3 different religious groups, and he hit Pilate, Herod, and Pilate. And basically they came out, and ultimately he had the decision that through the authorities that he would be crucified, and they put that in motion for him. And today what we're going to actually be studying are the events that happened with the crucifixion and how that rolled in. When Pilate finally turned him loose to the people and he went through another round of beatings and this type thing, as our lesson starts today, he was headed to the Calvary for the crucifixion. What was he having to do when he headed for the crucifixion? What was one of the things that he was required to do? Had to carry his own cross. Did he have trouble? Why do you think he had trouble? It was give out, literally give out. Where is he on, if we stop and think about this, he's now on about 36 hours to 40 hours without sleep. Excuse me, if you remember on Thursday, they had the supper all night. They went to the garden and he didn't sleep any, and now he's going into where he hadn't even sleep. He's gone through all the beatings and things like that, so he just gave out. So what did they do? What did the people do? The soldiers. Yeah, but when he gave out, what did they do? On the cross. Yeah, got somebody else. Who'd they get? Anybody remember who picked the cross up? It's kind of interesting, made the Bible when he did it. Simon of Cyrene, he was in town from where? They said it was an Egyptian. He was in town. I probably didn't even know too much about this if you look at it. It's just kind of, he got picked up, and here he is, and they told him to carry the cross for Jesus, which he did. The other thing it does mention, it not only mentions his name, but it does say that he had 2 children, Do you remember what his children's name were? Rufus ought to remember one of them. It was Rufus. Yeah, one of the kids was Rufus. He ought to remember that, and Alexander was the other. It's just kind of one of those little asides. We don't know why they pitched it in, the Holy Spirit, but they did pitch that in, and we have that. So when they get ready and they put him on the cross, and we're going to spend most of the time this morning while he's on the cross and working with that. What signs, 4 different accounts of this, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what was the sign that they put up for Jesus over the cross? King of the Jews. This is, now if we look at Matthew said this is Jesus, King of the Jews. Mark and Luke both say King of the Jews. John says Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Who designed the sign? Who decided what the verbiage on the sign? Pilate did. Who didn't like it? The Jews. Because what were they killing Jesus for? Claiming to be their king, and it's just kind of ironic. It's kind of one of the first times that you see Pilate having even a little bit of backbone about him. Because when the Jews came and said, no, don't put that up, what did he say? Yeah, I've written it. What I've written. Kind of get over it type of thing, that he came back. He didn't want to have any more discussions. Let's go back and think about it again. Was Pilate really excited about what was going on? He wasn't excited about it. It wasn't what he thought he ought to do, and who else in his family wasn't excited about it? Yeah, his wife. She told him to stay away from it because she'd had bad dreams over what was going to happen. So we see all of these things that were carried on with it. What else? What other activity was going on while Jesus was being crucified? Yeah, there were 2 other Jews. He wasn't the only one being crucified that day. There were 2 other people being crucified. And what was their notoriety? Why were they being, they were thieves. It says they were thieves, they were robbers. Again, as you look at the different places, it talks about them being robbers. In Matthew and Mark, it talks about them being criminals. They were bad guys. And they had gone through the system too, so they, again, were in this process of where they were being crucified with him. Now, as we go through the day, these things, about what time are we talking about day now? 9 o'clock in the morning. Talks about the 3rd hour, and this is about the time that he went on the cross, it's 3rd hour. So again, we've had a lot of activity going on. A lot of it has been nighttime. Right after we get out of the night, they kind of had these trials going on. And what's happening to Jesus in between the trials? And every time he's facing a different group of people, a lot of times they're deciding to do what to him? Beat him. I mean, he's going through scourgings, he's going through beatings, and all of this happening. And then they head to the cross. And it's about the 3rd hour of the night. As we go through the lessons and we look at this, what's one of the first things as they got to the crucifixion, and it looks like maybe it happened a couple of times, what did they offer Jesus before they crucified him? Yeah, they offered him sour wine. It mentions in Matthew that it was mingled with gall, and Mark said with myrrh, and Luke says it was sour wine. What was the purpose of this? From a historical standpoint, anyway, what was the purpose of the wine and the myrrh? A lot of the commentary said it was kind of a anesthetic, kind of pain remover. It was the type of thing to I guess, not make them hurt as bad, this type of thing that they were going through. What did Jesus do in Matthew? Says that he tasted it, but he did what? Spit out. He didn't drink it. It just said he tasted it, and he didn't do this. But this was part of the process that they were going through. John was a little more descriptive. It said they gave it to him. Even in John, it said that they applied it to a sponge and left it up for him to do that. So this is preparation that they're going through to put people to death. Did they do this very often? Was crucifixion totally unusual, or was that, that's part of the Roman process. When people were bad, they crucified them. So this wasn't something that the people were not used to. What did they do with Jesus' clothes? Yeah, who got them? Yeah, the guards. Who were the guards? Jews? Romans. Yeah, the Romans got them. And this wound up fulfilling what? The prophecies. This wound up fulfilling the prophecies that these things were going to happen. So as the Jewish people came back later, they're going to be able to see, if those that knew the prophecies in the Old Testament, they're going to be able to see this happen all the way through. What's one unique thing happened? It says when they were dividing the clothes, it said they did what with those clothes to get them? Cast lots. It was like roll the dice for it, you draw straws, we do different things. Who was going to get one thing? They did this one thing so they wouldn't have to do what with the clothes? They weren't going to tear it up. This was, again, go back to part of the prophecies. They weren't going to tear it up. And you had the Roman people that were going through this process that they were looking at. Now, this is just in preparation as we get on the, through the process of what's happening to them. This is starting again about the third hour of the night of the day. When they're going in about 9 o'clock in the morning is when the physical crucifixion starts. It's going to be kind of a long day. We don't know too much other than after they gone and had some conversations that were going on. But he went on the cross the third hour of the night, of the day. What happened the 6th hour? Got dark. How dark? I think God turned the lights out personally. I think it got dark. Now, we go through, it's kind of interesting how people will go through, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, it was an eclipse, that was unusual, and it was an eclipse. Now, what did we have the benefit of in southern part of the U.S. about 2 years ago? Eclipse. Laura and I were privileged to be in a place where we were there when it was a total eclipse. Guess what was not there during the total eclipse? Total darkness wasn't there. It was just like dusk. You could still see stuff. It just wasn't bright sun shining. This is, I'm totally convinced this is total darkness that's going on when at 12 o'clock, the 6th hour. So we've got some time frame in here where, I don't know how the Roman soldiers are feeling. I think there's an awful lot of things going on that you just go, wow, what are we in the middle of now? What are we doing? What's happening? I think as we go on and see some of the other things going on with this, we'll probably be able to see it. So what's some of the things that God has chosen for us to know? When we look at the events through these things, God's given us some specific conversations or statements that Jesus made. The first one that's recorded in everyone was the Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Now, what does that mean? It tells us, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why do you think Jesus said that? I think it's the man in him that's talking too. I mean, he knew what was going on. What about 15 hours before this, what had he been doing in the garden? Yeah, he prayed to God to let this cup pass from him. At this point, he knew what? It wasn't going to. And I think it shows us sometimes when we as Christians, and we if we're not careful, if I'm not careful, I can pass it off that this wasn't too bad for Jesus because he's what? Divine. He's divine, and hey, this wasn't a bad thing that was happening. He was God. They could kind of tweak his pain a little bit. If we're not careful, we get him all the way up here as God, where this crucifixion wasn't bad. Jason?
I wanted to, in both instances, the argument we have here, if the pain was the least of, truly the least of his worries, the experience of the cross was the least of his worries, we have God himself who knew no sin. 2 Corinthians 5 said he became sin for us. At that moment that he died, there seems to have been some kind of differentiation, some kind of separation, some kind of perhaps momentary forsaking because of the sin. I wonder if that's what he was alluding toward.
Yeah, and I don't know that we know, and I guess where I'm really going, even if it's this other thing, this was really deep, bad stuff he's going through. And it's emotional, it's not just, if we're not careful, it gets routine and we just kind of zip through it. How many times have we zipped through the Lord's Supper and not even remotely felt emotionally what he felt? And we don't feel any appreciation of what we have. What should we be feeling when we take this? Sorrow. What else? I might go the other side. It is sorrow because he died. What else can I feel as a result of it? Joy and the fact that he died for who? Me. And I think, y'all know, me is my favorite answer in a lot of these things. If we don't personalize it, we generalize it. When we take that Lord's Supper, he died for me, and that ought to be a lot of appreciation and honor and aim me towards trying to be what was better. They were trying to do this. Well, what else did he do when he was on the cross? It was pretty amazing. He asked God to do what? Yeah, why? They didn't know what they were doing. Was that a true statement? I think particularly, with that forgiving, he was kind of aiming that towards who? Yeah, the Romans. I mean, he was aiming it towards the Romans, towards the soldiers. They were crucifying, and he was saying, forgive them. You know, they don't know what to do. Do you think Romans knew what was going on? They probably didn't have a clue. They just thought Jesus was in the same category as who? The other two robbers. Their job that was crucifying him, their job was to do what? Crucify people. And that was just, they went to work, and that's what they did when they went through this process. Do we have a hard time praying to God to forgive people that mess with us? Do we really want God to forgive them, or do we want God to get even with them? Sometimes we may want God to get even, pay them back just a little bit, God. We don't want to work. Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he's looking at other people and is still focused towards other people. Gets into a discussion with who while he's hanging on the cross? Yeah, he gets in a discussion with the thieves, and they are discussing with each other. How long are they going to be on the cross? How long was Jesus on the cross before he died? Started at what hour of the day? 9, turned dark, 12, and when was 3 o'clock? He's on the cross 6 hours. We sometimes think about people as in America, when people are executed for bad things, we're talking about seconds. Jesus hung on the cross 6 hours alive. He went through these things for 6 hours, so there was some discussion going on. And what was the discussion of the robbers? What brought up some of these things that the robbers, the thieves, one of the thieves were beginning to do what to Jesus? Yeah, well, one of them was mocking him. It started off, they was just mocking him and kind of basic again saying, hey, if you're Jesus, get down and take us with you. Again, that's one of the things to prove who you are, that you goes down. But when the one thief went with that, what did the other one do? He kind of came back and said, time out. Whoa. We deserve what we're getting. He doesn't deserve what we're doing that. And then what was Jesus' comment after these things? Today you'll be what? Yeah, today you'll be in paradise with me. And we can get into a lot of discussions exactly where that paradise was and what all that paradise was. I'm willing to just say Jesus said some really good things to that guy that day because of where he was attitude-wise, and we can get a lot of stuff going on. I've heard a lot of discussion, well, could he be saved? And we get into baptism, and then we get all that good stuff. Jesus is hanging on that cross, and when he told that guy that was good stuff that he told him. And someday when we get to heaven, we may know exactly what he said. If we get there, we kind of know the whole meaning. The good thing, this was really a powerful thing that he did to a pretty bad guy in his life. Okay, what's some other things that Jesus said while he's on the cross? He had some conversation with other people. Who was he concerned about probably as much as anybody going on at the cross? His mother. Where was she? She's there watching what happened. I don't know if you noticed, there was just an awful lot of Marys there. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and John, and Mary the mother of Jesus. But Jesus specifically did what? Recorded in John at this point, while he's hanging on the cross, while he's dying for my sins and for your sins and everything else, he takes time out to make sure that who's going to take care of mom? John. It's kind of interesting. If we read all the way through the events in Jesus' life, it's pretty obvious that one of his favorite apostles was who? John. It talks about they loved him. He's in all the experiences that go through. So he looked at him and he says, it's going to be your job to take care of mom. Do we do anything like that today? I think even we do this sometimes when we see something happening And if it's people in our families, we ask other folks to help take care of them, look out for them. Is that a good trait that we have? What's happening in Nashville right now, in Cookville? What are people doing? They're helping other people when they need help and they don't have the ability to do themselves. And this is one of the things that we're supposed to do, and Jesus was making sure Mom was going to be taken care of after he was gone. He was using the process that would put in place. Did they have ability to do anything else to be able to take care of Mom if they wanted to? Yeah, all right, you know, bottom line, God could have taken care of it. They've been involved in Mary's life her whole time, and they might have been able to do some other things, but they chose that they were going to be able to do this. As Jesus is hanging on the cross, in Luke particularly, it's recorded that he says, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." What does this know? What does this mean? He knows what? He's dying. And there's a difference, and he didn't say he was committing his body. He didn't say he was committing his physical thing. He says, I'm committing, at this point, my spirit to you. What happens to each of us when we die?
Soul departs.
Yeah, the soul departs, the spirit departs. Committed to who? Hopefully. Yeah, the spirit of life does go. Yeah, through Hades, and ultimately wherever God decides it's going to wind up being through judgment and those type of things. He goes. But it's the two beings, and Jesus had those beings. Then we see right before his death, what's the final statement before he died? It is finished. It's finished. What's finished at this point? His work. Yeah, it's now his purpose on earth is finished. What was his purpose? What did this finishing do for us?
Well, it's salvation, but it took away all of the old law that kept us up, set us up a new law that would have us be able to be saved.
Okay, took away the old law, set the new law up. What's difference? One of the major differences between the old law and the new law. I'm still fishing. He said Gentiles. That's right. It's open to everybody. What's the difference between in the old law and when Jesus died with the new law? There's one huge difference that we all get to partake of if we want to, and that's what? All right, take away sins, and what did you say, Rufus? Yeah. We have a chance that our sins can be taken away. Now, it does say, I think it retroactive that the other people could do that, but we can take care of our sins. When? When can we take care of our sins? Every day. Yeah, we can take care of our sins every day. He gives us the ability. If he had not died, and if he had not shed that blood, if it had not been finished, could we do that? We couldn't do that. We just don't have that ability to do it. We can take care of it every day. Do we have to be inside the sanctuary? What does it take for us to get rid of sins. I'm kind of interested as I went through and read these things. Jesus was involved really with the whole purpose of his work. He was involved with everything that was kind of going on in his life, where we have that. He was setting up and knew the power of what we have, and we need to spend a little bit of time every day really personally being just involved with Jesus. If I mess up, when do I need to take care of that mess up? Right then. I mean, if we know we messed up right then, we just need to talk to God. We need to spend time with God and just share with him, and he'll help us to get rid of that and go with it. Now, what do we need as Christians to do? I want to play off again. What's a lot of people doing in Nashville and Cookeville this last week? What are tons of people doing? They're helping. They're helping. They're picking up houses, they're picking up clothes, they're picking up trees, they're putting things on the side of the road. Anna's got sore muscles today, right? They were up yesterday hauling some things around with that. That's good. I mean, that's really some things that we need to do, is helping in a time. What happens if I get hung up in sin? What do I need to do? Just keep wallowing in it?
Get out of it, pray.
We need to get out of it, and we need to pray. What do we as Christian people need to be concerned about also? As a Christian family, what do we need to be concerned about? It's each other, yeah. And it goes back, if somebody's got a storm going on in their life, got a sin storm going on in their life, what should I be doing? Praying for them? Maybe go and just chat with them. Maybe pull the limb off, the tree off, something out of the way. Easy? Not necessarily easy. I mean, it may not be. In fact, could we get emotionally involved with what's going on in their life? We better. Who do I want emotionally involved in my life? I want Christ involved. I want Christ to really know I do care and I'm trying. And he's given us these families that people do really care about it, and this is a huge family that goes on. One of the sad things going on, Lee and I were just talking about it, we look at church families at times, and I would dare say that most of us know somebody in Nashville that both is church person and got hurt pretty bad or killed. The young couple with a child, 3 people that got killed in Cookeville, was real close friends with Lee and Joyce's granddaughter. Actually, she was in their wedding, I believe, doing that. And I get a call from my daughter in Indiana, and she says, oh, you know what? I went to school with the mom of that girl. It was like, wow, what a thing that's going on. And you reach out and help with folks that goes on in there. And we really need to do those things. So, 12th hour. Went dark at the 9th hour. What happened at the 12th hour? Jesus said, it's finished. And then what happened? Yeah, the graves were open. Temple veil was thrown. Big stuff happened. How big was it? How do we know how big and impressive it was? Jesus quit talking, but who started talking right then? What kind of soldiers? The Roman soldier said, what? Man, this was the Son of God. They knew what went on when they saw it. Would we have been frightened to death also? What had they just endured for 3 hours? How dark? Pitch black. How could we know how dark it really is with no source of light? Have you ever, one of the favorite things these cave people do for you, they take you down underground where you have no lights, and all of a sudden they say, hang on to the rope because we're fixing to cut the lights off. And what happens when the lights go off? What can you see? Nothing. What happens to you? Yeah, it's frightening. You get unsteady. It's hard. They want you to hold on because you may lose balance. I guess that's darkness-induced vertigo that some of us go through. It's one of those things that's just total unsteady. They've been through this for 3 hours. They heard Jesus, then all of those things happened, and they knew that he was the Son of God. They came back and they knew that he was the Son of God. So, who stayed around? Now, first thing, well, before that, they came around towards the end, and what were they going to do with with Jesus and the other guys? Yeah, they're going to break their legs. Why were they breaking their legs? Yeah, they needed their legs to continue to breathe. The whole thing was so gruesome, they lost that. So that when they broke a leg, that just meant they were going to suffocate to death, that they were going to do this. When they got to Jesus, they saw what? He was already dead. Who had said that was going to happen? The prophecy said no bone was going to be broken in it. You know, when it comes forward, they were going to do that. So what did the Roman soldier do without breaking his legs just to make sure that he was dead? Pierced his side so his blood came out, and he shed the blood that he died. So they knew that he was on the cross. We have the women there. So who came and got Jesus? The body. Yeah, Joseph of Arimathea. And Joseph's a kind of interesting guy. We don't talk about him a lot, but he was kind of an interesting guy. First off, who did he go and check with to make sure he could have the body? Went to Pilate. Why do you think he went to Pilate? He's the guy in charge, and he knew that. In fact, what was Joseph of Arimathea? If we just look at him, what was his position? Yeah, he's on the Sanhedrin. It's kind of an interesting point. He was a member of the Sanhedrin. Where have we run into the Sanhedrin? Yeah, the trial. How long ago? Yeah, this is about 12 hours ago, somewhere in that frame. He had been in the group that was deciding whether they wanted to kill Jesus or not. He was in one of those early trials of the Sanhedrin when they were kind of swapping between Annas and Caiaphas early Friday morning after he came out of the garden. It does say that he didn't agree with the vote. It said that he didn't agree with it. He was against it. Who else does it say was against it? It's another one that's kind of interesting that is mentioned just as an aside. Who was his partner in getting the body? Anybody remember in the accounts who the other person was? Just kind of snuck in. Nicodemus. Yeah, Nicodemus, who was also on the council, who also disagreed. So it mentions the Bible here that these two people, while they were Jewish, we've got Joseph of Arimathea, and we have Nicodemus, and they disagreed with the council on that. Probably didn't make them real fun. They probably have a lot of people trying to get them booted off the council now if they went the other way with it. So we have those two people. What does it say about Joseph? What kind of person was he?
Good and righteous.
He was good, righteous, and wealthy. Yeah, it's good, right. And sometimes those don't go together. But they were good, righteous, and wealthy. So what did he have? He had a new tomb. He had a tomb. And so he went and asked Pilate permission to do what? Take him down and bury him. Who worked with them in burying Jesus? Mentions that the women were there and helped wrap him too, and I have to believe this is the Marys and the Marys and the Marys and the Salome that was at the crucifixion itself, that they went down and they took him to the tomb. Now they're faced with a little bit of a problem with this tomb now, because the Jews have now killed Jesus. What was Jesus's promise that he was going to happen, or what did they keep asking for it to happen? That they wanted, if they kill him, he had kind of indicated he would do what? Yeah, rise again, that something's going to come up. This was bad enough that Joseph had the tomb. What the tombs looked like then? What were the tombs? Caves, basically caves. And how did they seal them? Big rocks that what? Yeah, they closed open and they rolled. I mean, these were kind of where you could walk inside, and there were huge rocks that could close that. So they put them in. Now we got the other Jews coming up, and they're headed back to Pilate and to the authorities saying, time out, we need what? We need guards, because what's going to happen? Yeah, they're going to say that people came and stole the body. They're going to come back and do that. So Pilate said what? You got it. Put the guards, seal it up, do your job. Get out of my life. By this point, I think Pilate is really ready to be done with all of this that's going on, because, being non-Jew in this whole thing, he's just ready to be out of it. So they go seal the tomb. And what happens? He's raised from the dead. He comes out of it. Who finds it? Mary. So these are good answers at the end. You can just say Mary. We won't get down to which one was faster than the other. They were going out and found it. I never walk around too much. Okay. Sorry about that. So they actually go back the next morning, and what do they see when they get there? Empty tomb. It's empty. And it's open first. When they get there, it's open. They go in. He's not there. Who's afraid? Who has a huge amount of fear in their body right now? The guards. Why? They're about to die. I mean, in their viewpoint, they're about to die, because their job was to make sure that nothing happened. Now, they got a little bit of a problem, because something obviously did happen, and now the Jewish people, and maybe in agreement with some of the Roman people also have to come up with what? Do you think that the Jewish Sanhedrin wants this thing and said, oops, we were wrong. Hey, he is the Son of God. Look, he rose. That's not the story that they're wanting to get out. So who do they need to get a different story out? They need the guards. And they're trying to work with the guards and some of the things that we come up with, and we just have all sorts of things. People still use some of those things today that, Jesus, somebody came and stole him, and they go through all of these different things that came up. The guards knew what happened. And then we'll see after this where Jesus does start entering, and the rest of the class for the next 2 or 3 weeks will be on his life after this and the things that he went through. The story is gripping. The story should be life-changing, and it should be life-changing for each one of us as we go through our life, as we have things that beat up on us, as we have things that are doing bad stuff to us. We can look at Jesus and his life and know he did what? Yeah, he's Son of God, but what did he go through?
Pain and suffering like we do.
Yeah, well, Don said pain and suffering like we do. I'm not sure we've ever reached his total pain and suffering he went through. He knows what we go through. He cares, and he died so we can eventually look, and where can we not have pain and suffering and grief and all that? Where do we get over that? In heaven. I'm going to get to heaven based on what? My choices that I make with what Jesus did for me. He gave the means, and he gave me the choice to do that. Okay, next week we'll keep going on the last part of his life. And I'll keep the microphone attached.